Thanks, listeners, for joining us. It's time for Elko Live today, and our very special guest in studio are with the city of Elko. It is Tuesday, and so that's the day we set aside to get updated on city issues, and we're in between meetings, and so we get a treat today. We get to have, of course, our guest from the Elko City Water Department, and in fact, water and sewer, although we're going to be talking primarily about water today. Water season is here, and that means conservation, that means turning on your sprinklers, and just kind of checking in. And so we're going to do that with Director Dale Johnson. Welcome, Dale.
Hi, thanks for having us here.
Thanks for coming on the radio today. It's excellent to see you here. We also have Water Superintendent Jim Kerr, and I know you are super excited to be here in studio today.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Jim. And then also the assistant to the Water Superintendent, because it is a very big job. We appreciate you being here, Andrew. Thanks, Andrew Storla.
Hi, ma'am. Thank you. Proud to be here.
Yes, I'm happy to have all of you in studio today because the water department is a very crucial part of municipal government. In fact, our city council is nonpartisan, and that's for a good reason because, really taxpayers want to have paved roads. They want to have fire and police services. And when you think about it, they want toilets that flush and they want clean drinking water. Isn't that right, Dale?
That's correct. And our fund is an enterprise fund, which is funded by the ratepayers that use the water and sewer within the city.
And we also have a lot of planning that goes into water and sewer because we have to have those resources before we can grow, whether it's commercial or residential development. So you're a big part of that, too.
Yes, we are.
That's why we have things like a lift station at exit 298, considerations like that.
Yep, that project is already been bid. We should start construction here probably the late fall. Groundwater table is kind of high right now, so as soon as we get some materials procured, and we could probably start construction.
So a lift station is integral to sewer capacity because you need to be able to pump it back to the water sewer treatment plants, right?
That's correct.
Yes.
And that project is a lift station and force main, which will serve the exit 298 area.
That area is seeing growth and significant growth with Komatsu being out there, Dale. I mean, that's been a huge economic driver for the community, and they seem so pleased with the city that they are expanding or have expanded.
Yes, they did do a pretty large expansion recently, and I know they're working on some other things as well. So.
And because we have this kind of capacity and planning that goes into this department, we have things like it's the Sandvik warehouse that's going in near the police station, right?
That's correct.
Yeah. Now that was an area that was really underdeveloped.
It is underdeveloped. Sandvik's a large industrial commercial property, which is difficult to put in that type of area of town, but it'll work for the city.
And every time you put in a development like that, right, Dale, then it can really spur other development and even improvements because it goes back into the taxes available.
That's correct. It's a big producer for taxes within the city.
And I know a lot of what we're going to talk about today is obviously, conserving water. We have a modernization plan that we're going forward with, is approved by the council. So we're going to see some rate hikes. But I think, Dale, it's really exciting, and I hope people, well, I know they do appreciate it, but I hope by the time they're through listening today, they understand how much planning, because if we didn't have planning like your department does, then we wouldn't be able to use ARPA funds the way we have, make investments in the community.
Yeah, we've been talking rate increases for almost 2 years now, and then started the modernization study, and it's pretty much come full circle now that council has approved the rate increases that would take in effect in July. For our flat rate customers, that's 20%. Our metered customers is 10%.
And there's good reason for that because flat rate, we're simply subsidizing, right?
We're subsidizing our metered customers because they're using quite a bit more water than our metered customers are.
They pay for what they use. That should be fair. We should all pay for what we use.
That's correct.
Yeah, so that's where we're going with that. There will be no commercial increase right away, though?
We're doing a business impact study right now, and So all the businesses are making comments on rate increases. So once we get those back, it'll go back before council.
Perfect. Talking with Director Dale Johnson from the Elko City Water and Sewer Department. And before we're going to switch over and talk to both Jim and to Andrew. But I'm wondering, Dale, if you wouldn't mind describing how you depend on both Jim and Andrew. That'll probably help us to have a good conversation. What is it that they do for us and for you, for our department?
They manage the day-to-day operations of the water and sewer systems. They manage the crews and make sure we're providing safe drinking water to the city.
So you're doing some work in the office at the desk, right? And then these guys go out and get their boots dirty.
That's correct. They do some office work too, though.
Okay, Andrew does
for
too.
For the most part.
All right.
Well, I try to make sure that Jim doesn't have to leave the office. So he is the superintendent after all.
Oh, that's good. Andrew knows. Yep. Well, Andrew is the assistant water superintendent, so you've always got your eye on doing that. And how big of a crew do you have, Andrew, if you wouldn't mind?
Currently, we have nine guys that work throughout the city every day with water and sewer.
And that's actually a pretty small staff. I mean, would you say maybe for the size of the city?
Well, considering that the city is continuously growing, yes, it's pretty small. But honestly, these guys work hard, and I really can't thank them enough that they're doing all the heavy lifting, and honestly appreciate it.
Okay, Andrew. And then if I'm guessing correctly, Jim, we'll let you do some talking here too. Water Superintendent Jim, have you been with the department for a long time?
Almost 2 years now.
Okay, so, and before that, you probably did other things.
I was with Elko County as the Public Works Superintendent over there.
So you know a lot about how important it is that we, that we work together. Taxpayers don't really recognize boundaries, right? I mean, it's important that we have, yeah.
Yes. It's, you have, everybody pays taxes, and there's taxes that go to the county and taxes that go to the city. One of the things about water and sewer is, like I said, it's an enterprise fund. Like Dale said, it's an enterprise fund that doesn't use tax dollars. So we have to be self-supporting. We are our own business, basically, for the city.
Mm-hmm. And so that's why, again, the modernization plan that we're talking about, we will see some increase in rates, but that will simply help to pay for the system going forward, right?
Yes. And when you do a modernization plan, the idea is to eventually cut costs. So there's some upfront costs, but hopefully because of these costs, we will not see rate increases to keep up with the driving costs of inflation. So that's the idea.
And again, the goal, and we'll come back and talk to Dale about that too, about conserving water. A lot of the theme of our program today will be about that. And so, oh no, that's okay, Jim. I was going to ask you. He's like, okay, you go right ahead. So, but Jim, so would you say that paying for that infrastructure, it's part of our responsibility. We don't get a lot of federal grants, and some communities wait until everything's just broken, right, before they go in.
It's a touchy subject, but I dealt with it when I was at the county as well. Trying to get the elected officials to raise rates is sometimes very challenging because the taxpayers are the ratepayers, and of course, when you're raising rates, it's tough for them to make those decisions. So, yes, it's very challenging.
But when we find ourselves in the situation, we have among the lowest water rates in the entire state. And if you compare what residents in Spring Creek go through, Jim.
Surprisingly, yes, Elko is, after we did the rate study, we are very low compared to some of the other areas in the state, yes.
Okay. Well, we're going to talk more with you, Jim, obviously. I want to make sure we get to your key talking points today. I appreciate it. And, of course, Andrew, who's here waiting anxiously to talk about when a call goes out, Andrew, right, then your crew, usually is it a call because water is gushing somewhere? Is that kind of how it happens? Or
Technically, yes, that's usually the reason. But when we get there, it's really not gushing as was put over the line. But no, it just depends, especially where you're at, how bad the leak is, because it does need to get marked out. That's why you call 811 before you dig. We do too. and it usually takes about 3 days. But then also the severity of the leak. I know some people have seen on Facebook and whatnot that some of our leaks can get pretty crazy. And
They're like pressurized. They shoot up in geysers.
yes, ma'am. And depending on what part of town depends on the pressure that's in the street, to be honest.
Yeah, the one that comes to mind is the one downtown, I think a couple of years ago, right by Cowboy Arts and Gear Museum.
Yes. That was right off of 5th and Commercial. That was right in front of everybody. So it was quite a sight to see, but I'm glad we got that taken care of and under control.
Yeah, definitely. That definitely made a hole in the pavement. I mean, it was quite a spectacle for everybody. So,
yes.
Yeah, really cool. So thank you, because we know that you're going to be out there, again, dispatching crews, working with the crews, isolate the problem, right, see what it takes to fix it. Because we also have all these areas throughout the city, right, Andrew, where obviously some of the infrastructure's new, some of it's really old.
Yes. So that is some things that we do have to deal with is old infrastructure and what our maps show, what we know of, and then what is new underground that was older and didn't find until now. And that kind of addresses everything a little bit more so out there.
It's fascinating, but for people that are not aware, we have some beautiful subdivisions, new, kind of on the edge of town. You're okay. We have these subdivisions that have been put in, so obviously they're going to have new infrastructure, maybe connected to some of these new wells. But in places like the Tree Streets, for example, historic Court Street, those homes may have even initially had outhouses, right? I mean, that's how old some of those places are.
Well, we ought to start somewhere, and yes.
Now, this is the comic in the group. That's awesome. So, yes. So, but
Keeps it light.
yeah, keeping it light, and you got to have I think, a sense of humor. Seriously, when you're working for water and sewer, because it's a tough job. So, in all kinds of weather and so on places like the Tree Streets, where that infrastructure is so old, how do you fix it or how do you replace it? Do you have any idea of what's going on underground?
Well, so that also depends on the season. We're getting to that time everybody can feel it. It gets hot during the midday, and then it gets cold at night. So the ground's moving, so all the older pipes are settling as well, and they move as well, and that's what kind of gets them to break. Especially in the tree streets, those are very mature trees, so their roots go deep, and they are big, and they also find water, just like any animal does. So, or even in plants. So, that's a real factor when it comes to where the leaks are and kind of what we can do to prepare ourselves. But all in all, it doesn't matter what time of day or night. We've been out there at 2:00 in the morning. Sorry about the noise. We'll try to keep it down, but we want to make sure everybody has water.
So that's a good point. To call for water and sewer emergencies that are in the city, and that's important, Jim knows, in the city, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, it's 775-777-7300. So Dale, who picks up that call?
The 7300 line is dispatch, same as our 911 dispatch, just non-emergency line. During regular business hours, it's easier to call City Hall directly at the 775-777-7100 number. That would get you to our offices, and we'd be able to get those calls a little quicker than going through central dispatch.
Well, in fact, you can also email elkoutility@elkocitynv.gov.
Yes,
Cool.
that's correct.
Okay, so that way if you have a question, maybe there's some mysterious water running in your gutter, right? And you're not sure where it's coming from. Is that a concern or?
Yeah. Call us, let us know. We'll have somebody check on that. It could obviously be irrigation. It could be an actual leak. One thing, if it's irrigation, property owners should be trying to keep their water on their property. So if it's running down the gutter, that's not a good thing. Try to keep it in your shrubs and on the grass and things like that.
So that's a really good segue into water conservation, right, Dale? Because I think you're going to see a lot more interest in this, right, when everybody's on water meters.
Yes, that's correct. I think a lot more people will pay attention to what their water is doing when they're on a meter. They're being billed for every drop they use.
especially as we talked about on the tree streets. I mean, older utility. I mean, older sinks, older toilets. Everything's older. Some of it's like decades old.
Yeah, and some of those fixtures actually use more water than today's fixtures. So that's one thing residents can do if they have the means, is upgrade their toilets and fixtures to water sense fixtures and things like that.
There is a complete water conservation guide online at the city website, and it has some things that, maybe you wouldn't even have thought about. I mean, it's about timing of when to water, your landscaping, to run your dishwasher and washing machine only when they're full loads, that kind of thing.
That's correct. If you're watering, you should be trying to water before 10 a.m. and after 6 p.m. on your scheduled day from
Yes.
June 15th to September 15th.
Yeah, there are set mandatory watering days. And if you have an irrigation system, you just have that set up and then you don't think about it anymore. I remember first it was a big deal. It's like, oh no, is it Wednesday? What day is it? Yeah.
Yeah, one thing to keep in mind is even addresses water on Sunday, Wednesday, and Fridays, and odd addresses water on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays. And there's hand watering on Mondays only.
Okay, so those are all important things you can do to conserve, and some of them are in code now, so some of them are requirements.
Yes, they are.
Yes, definitely. So our guests today are from the City Water Department. We have our Director, Dale Johnson. You've just been hearing from him, our Water Superintendent, Jim Kerr, and the Assistant Water Superintendent, Andrew Storla. And we're talking about water conservation, obviously. And we did want to mention, too, I'm just checking my notes here. Oh, as you talked about, Dale, and anybody obviously can chime in on this one, the city will participate in this modernization. This might take some time, though, right, to get there?
Yeah, it's a project that's probably going to last at least a minimum of 3 years. We'd hope to have it completed by then, but it could take a little longer than that.
So, Jim, would you want to talk a little bit about water meters? Is that something you have some experience? Like if someone's saying, why don't I just get a water meter installed now? Because we know new construction requires water meters. Is that right?
Yes, new construction, any new construction requires that you put a water meter in. There is a water meter grant program that residents can apply for, and in that grant program, there is a certain amount of money that's set aside that once that's done, we're not supposed to do any more grants. But the city's been very lenient about putting more money in that pot if people want it. But that grant program, the city pays for the installation of the meter pit and any upgrades to the water service if there is any. And then the customer has to pay for the meter itself, and then they would be on a metered rate, which is significantly lower than your flat rate customers. And then you would pay for the gallons that you use, and then your metered rate.
Okay. And is that running about a couple $1,000, $2,200 or something? Do you guys know, or how much is it now, Dale?
For the meter or the meter installation of the meter pit?
Well, since the city's going to cover the installation in the pit, right? Mm-hmm. So how much is the meter? What is the property owner's
The
responsibility?
meter, 1-inch meter is about $430.
Okay.
So,
Okay. So overall, it's about a $2,000 thing once you figure it out.
It depends on where we would have to set the meter.
Okay.
Some are more, some are less, depending on the construction of where the meter has to be set.
And Andrew, you were kind of nodding at that. So what is installation like? Like, what if a homeowner is saying, I live in an older house, I'm not sure what to expect. Are they going to have to tear up the yard? What goes on usually with a water meter installation?
Well, sorry. Yeah, cheeks are a little sore. I've been smiling a lot here.
I'm sure. I'm not sure. Yeah, is it your first radio show? You guys are doing great. So I know
thanks.
it's not Dale's. So yeah.
No, to be honest, the homeowner really doesn't have to worry that much because the city usually takes the brunt of the location of where the meter is going to be installed, whether it be in the sidewalk or the homeowner's grass property, depending on if they have a retaining wall, because then we're also talking about depth, because usually the pipes are about 4 feet down past the water, or not past the frost line, but under the frost line. So it just depends on, like for example, the tree streets. Most of them look pretty simple to install because it is an older, it's an older neighborhood, but it's fairly reasonable where everything's at. And again, it just also depends on where the trees are because it's a beautiful neighborhood, but a lot of mature trees and those roots go everywhere. So it just kind of depends on if it's going to have to go on the sidewalk or if it'll be able to go into the homeowner's yard.
And then who reads the meters, or how is that done? Is that something, Dale? You look, yeah.
So currently we have a drive-by system where all the meters that we currently have report to that computer system in the vehicle.
So it's like a satellite thing? Or?
It's more radio frequency. So
Cool.
yeah.
Okay.
And the new system with the modernization will either be a fixed base system, which is a tower system that constantly reports every like 15 minutes. So residents would know exactly what their billing usage is and things like that. They could be able to log in and see that, or it'd let us know if there's extra usage going by at a certain residence, so you could go check on that, make sure they don't have a leak, things like that. There's that system, and then there's like a cellular system as well that we could go with. Just depends on what we come up with in the funding there.
As
So,
you said, the next 3 years. Yeah. Okay. Did you want to add to that, Andrew? You're just. Yeah.
I concur. That's
Oh.
yeah, I'm good.
Yeah, you're not on the witness stand or anything. Now, I know you brought a list, Dale, and I want to make sure we're getting to all of your topics today, the things that are really important. Water you wanted to spend a whole half an hour talking about water conservation. I am so sorry. Okay. So, yes, definitely we're going to talk about water conservation. And actually something too that I know I see sometimes, and I wish that I could do a better job educating people, storm drains, runoff, like when you pour stuff into the gutter, where does it go? What shouldn't go in the gutter, right?
yeah, those all report to the river. So if you shouldn't be pouring things down storm drains or putting trash in them. We've actually seen residents in the past put their household waste in a storm drain and things like that. Obviously, we have code enforcement now that goes around and monitors that type of stuff, so that's kind of nice.
Yeah, that would create a terrible flooding situation. I mean, or lots of sanitary, all kinds of things that go wrong there.
It was a bad
Yeah.
situation.
Okay. All right. So we want to avoid that for sure. So, and there is a connection, obviously, to conservation and the availability of water, which are water tanks in the past. When everybody gets watering and running through the sprinklers and doing all the fun things in the summer, that can literally drain our water tanks at the time when we might need water the most, right?
That's correct. And the city's pretty lucky because we have 22 million gallons of storage, which a lot of communities don't have. So we are able to have a reserve amount of water for conservation and, fire flows and things like that. So
Do we have enough water for growth, all this growth that we're planning?
we do have enough water for growth, well capacity, things like that. The question is how much water's in the ground.
The aquifer.
The
right?
aquifer, exactly. So we have enough water rights and things like that, and we could build new wells, things like that, but it just depends on how much water's in the ground. So that's the big topic of conservation
Yes.
and why we get asked, we had such a wet year, why are we worried about conservation this year? Well, it's not for just today, it's for years in the future.
So if people don't understand, how an aquifer works, it obviously relies on snow melt and rainfall and anything that can seep into the ground and then go who knows where, several hundred feet.
That's correct.
And then there's a natural filtration system.
Yep,
Yes.
that's correct
Okay.
as well.
Yes. Okay. But then it gets pumped up into our water tanks.
Correct.
Okay.
And into the distribution lines through town.
Okay. And people may not make the connection to sewer, right? But sewer water gets treated.
It does. That's a very expensive process as well. The city has 108 miles of sewer lines, collection system. That doesn't include any service lines from homeowners. That's just our city mains that carry the sewage to the treatment plant. And then the plant treats that waste, and then we use that effluent water at the golf course and the fairgrounds, and a couple of ranchers use the effluent water as well.
And they use that to grow alfalfa, things like that, right? Correct. So, okay, so it's not something for human consumption.
Agriculture crops.
Yeah. Okay, good. And Jim, you're nodding too. I mean, obviously in your role with the county, I mean, people were largely on septic if they're not on the Spring Creek water system, right? So.
No, with the county, there was a couple of small wastewater systems in the county. There's one in Jackpot, one in Montello, and one in Mountain City. So they all have wastewater systems too. They're not as advanced as this plant here, but they do have to treat and pass all the state requirements as well.
And I think it's important to note too that, you know, for people who are reluctant to take, you know, say federal money, or they discourage that, those water treatment, those systems wouldn't be possible without federal grants, because those communities
No.
are so tiny.
No, if they don't get any advancement without federal funds, period. They don't, those rates out in those communities do not generate enough funds to be self-sustaining.
Yeah, and if you think about it, that's how important this department is, the City of Elko Water Department, you know, the federal drinking standards that we have, that it's all about promoting public health. I mean, that's the one thing that we have access to in this country, or should have access to in this country, right, Dale?
That's correct.
You guys all take this pretty seriously, I can tell. So it's nice to know. And like I said, we always have time. It doesn't matter if we're running over. But is there anything else on your list that we haven't really highlighted you wanted to emphasize in time for summer watering season?
Not so much on the conservation side of things. I have some couple project updates.
I would
after
love
we
that, too.
Finish the conservation stuff.
Yeah.
I have a conservation comment.
Please.
People that have sprinkler systems need to make sure that they check their sprinkler systems periodically through the summer, because most of the time they have them watering at night when they're probably at sleep. And sometimes things can break and they could be wasting water and not even really know it. So if they would go out and just run them for a few minutes once a month, just to make sure they don't have any broken lines or broken heads or anything, that helps out a lot.
Yeah, sometimes even just a lawnmower can take out a head, and you didn't even know that. So yeah, so it's pretty simple. That's a really good tip. And again, some telltale signs are, you know, if you've got excess water, you notice that there's water in the street, and you didn't, you know, your sprinklers aren't on, so you don't connect it, but your water could literally be gushing out and watering the street instead of your lawn. So yeah, so that can happen. Well, and Andrew, before I let Director Dale Johnson close out the show, I want to make sure we got to all the things that you were hoping to today, and any handy tips you might have for us.
No, thank you very much for having us on. But just going off of what Jim said, it's definitely good for you to check your own sprinkler systems, because you could be flooding out your neighbors, and that's really the problem, is that you know, we're all in the same community, so we kind of have to look out for each other on that. And then, you know, sorry about the water leaks, but we're getting to them, and it's leak season, so it's just a natural occurrence, but we got this. They're out there taking care of leaks as we speak right now, as a matter of fact. So yes, thank you. I appreciate being on.
Absolutely. Andrew Storla. He's the assistant, of course, to the water superintendent, and obviously carrying a lot of the load of a very small department of just 9 people, and it's leak season. So, yeah, that's awesome. So I know, Dale, you appreciate this crew, and we may have talked about this a little before we went on the air, but if someone does have a concern, or they suspect a leak, or, I mean, obviously this department wants to hear about it.
Yeah, we do. And like Andrew said, he'll get his crews dispatched out there to take care of things or check on things. And they go above and beyond sometimes and help the customers out, even if it's something that's going on their property, and give them pointers and advice on how to take care of things. So
Yeah, that's nice. You don't want to leave somebody in a panic, especially because, frankly, you know, a lot of older people live in these older homes. They may be paid for. They have not been able to afford to maintain them, possibly. I mean, there could be some issues and concerns with that. So
yeah, there is a lot of issues with some of the older homes, and not only irrigation systems, but their internal plumbing as well. I mean, we've been called for issues like that as well, and just try to help out where we can.
Well, and before we get to your updates on some really cool projects that are going to enable a lot of growth and it shows a lot of confidence in the community, Dale, any advice on flooding? Because we do know in the past, you know, we've had, you know, it was just horrific flooding, and that was really sad. Hopefully we're steering away from that now. We learned a lot of lessons during that time.
Yeah, don't have a whole lot of updates on any type of flooding right now. The river is coming up a little bit with the spring runoff. We do monitor that daily. We have procedures in place to take care of some of those things as that happens, but this year we didn't have a lot of the low elevation snow, so I think as things come off, if it comes off gradually, we should be in a good place.
Yeah, so don't get too frustrated with these cooler cycles that we have going into summer, because then the water doesn't just come rushing down at once. So
That's right.
Yeah, so that's good news. And I did want to mention too that our city departments all communicate, work together really well. I mean, we hear this time and time again, Dale, that, you know, if you need to help shut down a bridge when there's been a train derailment, everybody comes out. So yeah.
Yeah, all the departments work well together, which is really nice.
Yeah. So, and even when it comes to budget time, everybody's in the same room, and you guys talk about what the priorities are. I'm sure it's not always pretty, but, you know.
Yeah, enterprise funds are, again, a little different than the general fund, but we usually attend those meetings as well, just so we know what's going on and what constraints other departments are having. And sometimes we can fill those voids with equipment we already have, so that's always helpful.
Nice. It's part of being a good citizen, so anybody listening. And with that note, we just want to kind of let you send us on our way today, Dale, with an update on some of these big projects that we can all be proud of.
Yeah, our first project is the hospital second source. That's a ARPA-funded project. It was about a $2.7 million project, which will provide a second water line to the hospital. That project is wrapped up. We'll be having that on council for final acceptance, and we'll get that turned into service this week.
And I know it sounds obvious, but who benefits from that, right? We know the hospital needed to have a second source because it's terrible when an accident happened, something happened, and they didn't have. But it can also facilitate future growth?
It will facilitate some future growth. Part of that project was running a additional line down to the Tower Hill subdivision, which is right up on the top of Stitzel. When another project is constructed, the Elko Mountain Booster Station, that project will be able to serve that area plus other areas along the air card alignment, and Elko Mountain as well.
Okay.
With Elko Mountain, that project has been bid. We're looking at submittals right now. They're going to be ordering equipment, and that one should start construction sometime after July.
Is that one water, or do we cross into sewer?
That one is water.
Okay, that's water.
That's
okay.
a potable water booster station at our Lamoille tank that'll service some of these higher elevation areas in what will be a new 5,600 pressure zone.
Oh, great. Because it used to be that we talked about water tanks all the time, right? And you had to save and save and save and scrimp and save.
Yeah.
Yeah. But,
Yeah.
we still have
Yeah.
some tanks on the
Yep.
books?
Part of that project was a tank, but due to funding, that tank will not be constructed at this time. It'll just be the booster station, and we've tweaked the booster station a little to be able to hold pressure in the system and still meet our fire flows and things like that, but be able to start developing. And then as development drives that water tank, that tank will be constructed.
And you'll have some money in the bank. Very cool. Well, any other projects?
Yep. Our air cart project is currently out to bid. Our pre-bid meeting is tomorrow, so that's another large
Tell us about that
project.
one. Yeah.
That will be extending a water line from the hospital there where the hospital second source left off and extending it all the way to 4th Street water tank, which is our south side water tank. That'll also include a water line down Pinion and connect Pinion up to the air cart alignment. It'll be prepped for a 100-foot wide roadway. We're not going to base that road at this time. It'll just be native soil compacted. But it lays the groundwork for a road to be punched through from the hospital to that 4th Street.
And you've just been working quietly away on that while everybody else is arguing about where we should punch in another road to Spring Creek, right? So,
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
we know it's not a second road to Spring Creek, but it will alleviate a lot of those concerns.
Yeah, we're a long way off of having a road there, especially a paved road, but you got to start somewhere.
Well, that's exciting news. Thank you, Dale.
Yeah.
I feel like we buried the lead. We should have started with that, huh? Super cool. Well, since we were going to spend the whole half an hour talking about water conservation, thank you for putting all these other topics in here as well. We appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Did we get to everything you were hoping to?
Yep, I think so.
All right. So thanks again to these gentlemen for being on the program today. The director of the City Water Sewer Department is Dale Johnson, and Water Superintendent Jim Kerr, and Assistant Water Superintendent Andrew Storla. And you've been listening to Elko Live here on KELK. You can find this program archive online, because I know you're going to want to go back and listen to that, Andrew. It is at elkoradio.com. So yes, thank you. Thank you all so much, gentlemen.
Yeah,
Have a
thank you for
great
having
day.
us.
Thank you, listeners.
Thank you.